There are moments in life when something shifts inside you without warning. The world looks the same, the people around you behave the same, but your heart feels heavier than before, not broken, not hopeless, just heavier, as if some invisible weight has quietly settled inside your chest. You don't know why. You can't explain it, but you feel it. Maybe it happens late at night, when the house grows quiet and you're finally alone with your thoughts. You sit on the edge of your bed, trying to understand why your soul feels unsettled. Nothing dramatic happened today, no argument, no tragedy, yet something in you aches, softly, silently, like a wound you didn't know you had. Or maybe it shows up in prayer. You stand before Allah, hoping for calm, but instead, your chest feels tight. Your mind wanders. Your heart trembles. You're not distracted, no. It's something deeper. It's as if your soul wants to speak, but the voice hasn't formed into words yet. These subtle heavinesses are not random. They're not signs of failure, and they are certainly not punishments. Before Allah forgives a person, something remarkable happens. The heart wakes up. Ibn Arabi wrote that the beginning of divine mercy does not arrive with comfort. It arrives with awareness. When Allah wants to lift a servant toward forgiveness, He first returns them to themselves. He turns the heart inward, and the heart, after years of noise and routine, suddenly begins to feel again. Think about it. The heart that was once numb becomes sensitive. The eyes that once ignored their own reflection suddenly see something real behind them. The soul that once ran through the world without thinking pauses. And that pause is not a breakdown. It is the first sign of divine nearness. Have you ever asked yourself why heaviness often appears before healing? Why the moments right before change often feel the most confusing? Why the heart becomes restless right before it becomes peaceful? Imagine a person walking alone in the early morning just before sunrise. The world is still dark. The air is cold. The silence is unsettling. But the darkness at that moment is not the end of night. It is the last breath of it. And soon, without sound or warning, the horizon turns blue, then gold, then alive. Your heart is the same. When forgiveness is coming, a quiet darkness appears first, not to scare you, but to strip away what no longer belongs. You begin noticing things you didn't notice before. You feel subtle regrets. You feel small aches from past mistakes. You feel unexplainable humility. These feelings are not weaknesses, they are doors. The first door is heaviness, the second door is sensitivity, and the third is awareness. Allah does not forgive a person while they are asleep inside themselves. He wakes them gently, and sometimes that awakening feels like a weight pressing on the soul. A man once described this moment beautifully. He said, "I don't know what's happening. I'm not sad. I'm not afraid. I'm just aware." That awareness was mercy in its first form. Maybe you felt it too. The sudden urge to sit alone, the uncomfortable feeling when you think of an old sin, the softness in your chest when you hear Quran, the tear that falls without reason, the silence that feels heavier than noise. These are not signs of spiritual failure. These are the footsteps of forgiveness approaching you. Ibn Arabi said that Allah brings a servant into inner truth before He brings them into light. Meaning, before the heart feels forgiven, it must feel real. And that feeling, raw, unfiltered, honest, is often the heaviness you experience. So, if life has suddenly become heavier, if your heart feels tender in places it used to feel numb, if memories visit you with a strange softness, pause, Don't run from it. Don't misinterpret it. This heaviness may be the first sign that Allah is preparing your heart for forgiveness. It is the beginning of a journey that does not start with joy. It starts with awakening. When Allah prepares a person for forgiveness, He does not begin by erasing their mistakes. He begins by revealing them, not through humiliation, not through exposure to others, but by gently turning the heart into a mirror that finally reflects what it once ignored. This is the moment when old memories begin to surface, not with sharp pain, but with quiet clarity. You might suddenly remember someone you hurt years ago, perhaps with a careless word, a broken promise, or a moment of anger you never apologized for. You may even find yourself whispering, "Why am I thinking about this now?" The answer is simple. Your soul is showing you its shadows. Ibn Arabi explains that before light enters the heart must recognize its own darkness, not to drown in it, but to release it. A mirror only shines after it shows where the stains are. Think about when you clean a room that hasn't been touched for years. The moment you sweep the floor, dust rises into the air. The room feels worse, clouded, heavy. But is that dust a sign you made things dirtier? No. It is the sign that you finally started cleaning. Exactly the same thing happens within the soul. Before forgiveness descends, the soul releases what it has carried for too long. Old regrets, forgotten mistakes, harsh words we wish we could take back, moments we weren't proud of, habits we justified because they were convenient. These shadows rise not to punish you, but because Allah wants to lighten your load. A woman once said, "I don't know why these memories keep replaying in my mind. I thought I moved on." What she didn't realize was that those memories weren't returning to torture her. They were returning to free her. Because the moment a person finally sees their shadow, it loses its power. The soul has a strange way of communicating. It doesn't speak in words. It speaks in feelings, restlessness, sudden recollections, or a quiet discomfort around things we once ignored. When you suddenly feel guilty about something you justified before, that is not a trap. That is growth. Sometimes you may find yourself wanting to reach out to someone you wronged, not to fix the past, but because your heart is becoming honest. You might feel compelled to apologize. You might feel compelled to pray for them. You might feel compelled to forgive someone who once hurt you deeply. These impulses are not random. They are signs. Ibn Arabi says that every soul carries its own record, and before Allah wipes that record clean, He lets the servant see it one last time, not to shame them, but so that the forgiveness feels real. Forgiveness has a taste, a weight, a presence. And you can only feel it when you have walked through the corridor of your own truth. Have you ever noticed how the smallest mistakes begin to trouble you when your connection with Allah is quietly rebuilding? How a joke you made years ago suddenly feels wrong today? How a neglected prayer from your youth suddenly makes your chest heavy now? These are not interruptions. These are awakenings. The prophet said that true repentance is when a person feels sorrow for what they once considered insignificant, and sorrow itself is mercy. When Allah loves a servant, He does not let them remain numb. He wakes their conscience gently. He lifts the veil between them and their own heart. And the servant begins to see with new eyes, not the eyes of punishment, but the eyes of truth. So if old memories are resurfacing, if small regrets are whispering to your heart, If you feel tiny stings of honesty in moments you once passed through blindly, don't fear them. Don't push them away. These are signs. Signs that the soul is cleaning before it is cleaned. Because before Allah forgives a person, He opens the door of self-recognition. And once the heart begins to see itself clearly, it becomes ready for what comes next: softness, mercy, and release. Before forgiveness arrives, Allah does something subtle, something hidden, something almost invisible to the people around you, yet unmistakable inside you. He softens your heart. It happens quietly, without announcement, without miracles or signs in the sky. It happens the way dawn arrives, slowly, gently, in a way only a sensitive heart can notice. You begin to feel things more deeply than before. A verse of Quran that you've heard 1,000 times suddenly pierces through you like a beam of light. A small act of kindness from someone brings tears to your eyes. A child's laughter softens something you didn't know was hard, and you don't know why. You're not sad. You're not overwhelmed. You're simply softer. Ibn Arabi writes that mercy arrives before forgiveness, and mercy begins with softness. A heart cannot receive divine mercy while it is rigid, distracted, or armored. So Allah loosens its armor. You may notice this change in moments you least expect. You're sitting by a window, watching the light fall on the floor, and suddenly your heart whispers, "I miss Allah." You hear an ayah about mercy, and it feels like it was revealed for you alone. Or you see a person in suffering, an old man struggling to walk, a mother carrying heavy groceries, a stray animal seeking shelter, and your chest tightens with compassion. This tenderness is not emotional weakness. It is spiritual readiness. Just as soil must soften before seeds can take root, the heart must soften before forgiveness can enter. Hard soil repels water. A hard heart repels mercy. So Allah prepares the heart through a gentle, divine loosening. Think of a ripe fruit. Before it becomes sweet, it softens. Think of a tree before spring. Before it blossoms, the harshness of winter melts from its bark. In the same way, before the heart blossoms, its hardness melts. This is why people suddenly cry more during this phase, not from sadness, but from clarity. Tears wash what words cannot explain. Tears carry out what the heart is finally ready to release. A man once said, "I cried today, and I don't even know what I was crying for." But he did know. His soul knew, because tears are often the first language of forgiveness. You may find anger leaving you more quickly. Someone annoys you, but instead of reacting, you breathe. Someone wrongs you, but instead of plotting, you let go. You find yourself wanting peace more than victory, mercy more than ego, quiet more than argument. This shift is not your personality changing, it is your heart healing. Have you noticed how anger becomes uncomfortable when your heart softens? How lying feels heavier? How backbiting leaves a bad taste? How hurting someone, even in the smallest way, makes your soul uneasy? These are signs that Allah is removing spiritual rust from your heart. Signs that your inner world is preparing to welcome divine light. The Prophet said that when Allah wants good for a person, He makes their heart tender, easily moved, easily humbled, easily guided. A soft heart is a blessed heart. Ibn Arabi adds something beautiful. The heart that Allah is about to forgive becomes fragile, like a leaf in the wind. This fragility is not weakness. It is a surrender. You may even feel embarrassed by your sudden sensitivity. You may wonder, why am I crying over this, or why am I feeling everything so deeply? Don't be embarrassed. Don't hide it. Don't suppress it. This is Allah touching your heart. This is mercy flowing before forgiveness. This is softness sent from the heavens. Because forgiveness does not descend onto a hard surface. It descends onto a heart softened by awareness, tenderness, and willingness to change. So if your heart has become softer without reason, if you feel compassion rising, anger fading, empathy deepening, know this: you are not becoming weak. You are becoming ready. Ready for mercy, ready for cleansing, ready for forgiveness. There comes a point in this journey when the heart, after softening, begins to tremble. Not out of fear and not out of sadness, but because something deep inside is moving. Something old is loosening. Something long buried is rising to the surface. This is the phase many people misunderstand. The nights become heavier. The thoughts become louder. The emotions become unpredictable. Tears appear without invitation. Memories return without warning. You feel things you thought you had forgotten. You revisit moments you believed you had outgrown. You confront wounds you convinced yourself had healed. And you wonder, why now? Why is all of this coming back? Ibn Arabi explains that before Allah washes a heart, the soul squeezes out the poisons it has stored for years, not to hurt you, but to remove what you can no longer carry into the next stage of your life. He writes that a heart cannot receive light while it is still holding on to shadows. Think of it like washing a cloth that has been stained for a long time. When water first touches it, the dirt rises to the surface. The water darkens. The stain becomes visible. Does this mean the cloth is getting dirtier? No. It means cleansing has begun. Your soul follows the same pattern. Before Allah forgives a person, He allows them to feel what they once hid from themselves, not to punish them, but to purify them. This is why emotions rise before forgiveness falls. You may find yourself crying in sujood without knowing exactly what triggered the tears. You may feel overwhelmed by a memory from childhood. You may replay a mistake you made years ago and suddenly feel its weight for the first time. Awakening does that. It makes you see clearly what you once ignored. A woman once described it this way: "It felt like my heart was exhaling after holding its breath for years." She wasn't breaking, she was releasing. You might feel an urge to apologize to someone, or to forgive someone, or to make things right with Allah in a way you never attempted before. This urge is not guilt. It is mercy taking root inside you. Have you noticed how the heart becomes restless right before it becomes clean? How nights feel longer when the soul is shedding its burdens? How something inside feels tight when Allah is preparing you for relief? These are signs of cleansing, signs of transformation, signs of mercy disguised as turbulence. Dreams also change during this phase. They become vivid, meaningful, emotional. You may dream of falling, of climbing, of running, of crying, of being embraced, of revisiting old places. These dreams are not random. The soul is sorting through its history, reorganizing what was scattered. Ibn Arabi says that when the soul is about to be lifted, it begins to show the servant their inner book, the unspoken memories, the silent regrets, the forgotten aches, not all at once, but piece by piece, gently, like pages being turned. During this phase, even your breathing may feel different, slightly heavier, slightly deeper, as if your chest is making space for something new. You may sit quietly for long periods without knowing what you're waiting for. you're waiting for release. There is a moment in this phase when the emotions rise to their peak. You might feel overwhelmed. You might feel confused by your own reactions. You might feel as if your heart is being pressed from every side. But the truth is simpler and more beautiful. The soul is cleaning before it is cleaned. The heart is emptying before it is filled. The self is trembling before it is forgiven. And right when you feel you cannot hold anymore, the storm begins to pass. Suddenly, your tears dry on their own. Suddenly, your breathing softens. Suddenly, your mind stops fighting itself. Suddenly, your chest feels just a little lighter. Not healed yet, but lighter. Because emotional turbulence is not a collapse. It is a cleansing. It is the soul releasing what once defined you so that Allah may write something new upon your heart. So if you find yourself crying without reason, remembering without intention, trembling without understanding, know this: you are not falling apart. You are being washed, and what Allah washes, He prepares for mercy. As the inner world begins to change, the outer world quietly rearranges itself around you, not dramatically, not suddenly, but gently. So gently that at first you don't even realize what is happening. People who once felt close to your heart seem distant without explanation. Conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. Certain places you used to enjoy feel heavy, and habits you clung to for years begin to lose their taste. You may even tell yourself, "I'm changing." But the truth is deeper. Allah is changing your path. Ibn Arabi writes that when Allah prepares a servant for forgiveness, He removes from their life anything that would anchor them to their past darkness. And this removal often happens silently, through shifts you cannot control. Look closely and you'll notice the signs. A friend who drew you toward gossip suddenly stops calling. A toxic relationship collapses, not because you chose it, but because it simply could not survive the new softness in your heart. A workplace filled with impurity or dishonesty begins to feel suffocating. A habit that once entertained you now drains your spirit. These shifts are not losses. They are liberations dressed as endings. Have you ever felt uneasy in a place where you once felt comfortable? Or struggled to enjoy the same music, same conversations, same distractions that once filled your time? Why does this happen? Because when forgiveness approaches, the soul begins to shed. Just as a tree must let go of its dead leaves to make room for new ones, your soul lets go of attachments that would block its healing. And just as a snake sheds its old skin to grow, you too shed pieces of your old identity. These detachments are not punishments. They are divine protections. Allah removes what does not serve your elevation. Allah distances you from people who harm your soul. Allah breaks the hold of sins you once justified. Allah makes impurity uncomfortable, so purity feels natural. One man described this phase perfectly. He said, "I suddenly felt alone, but I wasn't lonely. It felt like Allah was clearing a space inside me." Exactly. When Allah wants to fill the heart with light, He empties it first. You may find yourself preferring silence over conversation. You may begin choosing solitude willingly, not out of sadness, but out of clarity. Crowded places exhaust you. Arguments feel pointless. Loudness feels intrusive. You no longer crave attention. You no longer chase validation. Your heart begins to choose peace. Ibn Arabi says, Allah separates His servants from what distracts them, so they may return to Him unchained. This separation can be gentle or painful. Sometimes you drift away from people. Sometimes they drift away from you. Sometimes something breaks suddenly, a friendship, a habit, a routine, and you don't know why. But Allah knows. He knows what conversations would harden your heart if they continued. He knows what environments would dim your spirit. He knows which people would hold you back from the station He is preparing you for. And so, quietly, He rearranges your life. You may notice that your heart begins to reject what once felt normal. Backbiting tastes bitter. Lies feel heavy. Pretending exhausts your soul. Sin leaves a stain you can no longer ignore. This is not a moral awakening. It is a spiritual transformation. Forgiveness requires space. Mercy requires purity. Light requires emptiness. And so, before Allah forgives a person, He removes the barriers inside their life that would block His mercy from settling into their heart. If relationships are falling apart, if old pleasures feel empty, if your soul feels detached from the dunya, do not panic. You are not losing your world. You are being lifted from it. Allah is preparing your heart for something better, for something higher, for something cleaner. You may not understand the shifts yet. You may not see the wisdom right now, but these detachments are signs, quiet, gentle signs that forgiveness is drawing near. After the heaviness, after the shadows, after the softness, after the turbulence, after the shedding of old attachments, something extraordinary begins to happen inside you. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not something you can easily explain to others. It is a moment, a breath, a subtle shift that feels like dawn rising inside the soul. For the first time in a long time, you feel a quiet peace settling in your chest. Not a peace that comes from answers, not a peace that comes from solutions, but a peace that arrives without needing a reason, like a soft light entering a dark room. This peace is the whisper of divine mercy. Ibn Arabi writes that Allah's mercy often touches the heart before the heart understands it. The servant does not recognize it immediately. They only feel a gentle calmness that descends upon their inner world like a warm breeze. You may be sitting in prayer, and suddenly your sujood feels deeper. You may recite a verse and feel it embrace your heart instead of passing through your ears. You may wake up one morning and sense that something inside you has shifted, even though nothing in your external life has changed. This is Allah preparing you for forgiveness. This is His nearness approaching your soul. Have you ever felt a moment where your chest, once tight with sorrow, suddenly expands with relief? Where your thoughts, once loud and chaotic, fall silent for a heartbeat? Where your soul feels watched over, held, understood, without a single word being spoken? These moments are not coincidences, they are signs. Allah places tranquility in the hearts He is about to cleanse. Before forgiveness is given, mercy is tasted. This phase is subtle. You may not even notice it the first time it happens. It might come while you're washing dishes, walking home, or sitting quietly in a room. A sudden stillness wraps around you and you think, what is this feeling? It is the beginning of spiritual companionship. People imagine that nearness to Allah feels like lightning or miracles. But in truth, nearness often feels like quiet, a silence that holds you rather than empties you, a calm that makes you breathe differently, a presence that is not seen but sensed. Ibn Arabi describes it beautifully. Before the sun rises, the world grows warm, meaning before forgiveness floods the heart, a gentle warmth announces its arrival. You begin to feel less alone. You begin to feel protected. You begin to feel guided, not through dreams or visions, but through intuition, clarity, and small signs Allah places in your path. Perhaps a verse appears at the right moment. Perhaps a stranger's words echo exactly what your heart needed. Perhaps a prayer you whispered months ago is answered quietly, without noise, without spectacle. These are divine hints, subtle reminders that Allah is closer than your own breath. Have you noticed how your heart begins to trust again during this phase? How fear loosens its grip? How sadness becomes softer? How worries feel less heavy? This is not emotional recovery. This is spiritual nearness. And with this nearness comes something even more powerful: surrender. A person at this stage no longer fights Allah's decree the way they used to. They no longer argue with fate. They no longer question every hardship. Instead, they feel an inner voice whispering, "It will be okay. Allah is with me." Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is resting in Allah after a long journey of resisting yourself. Forgiveness is close, so close you can feel its fragrance. When Allah's mercy approaches, the heart becomes like a calm sea after a storm. The waves settle, the water clears, the reflections return, and the soul can finally see the truth hidden beneath the turbulence. So, if a quiet peace has begun entering your life without explanation, if you feel moments of calm that make no sense logically, if your heart feels accompanied, even in solitude, know this: Allah's mercy is touching you. Forgiveness is approaching your heart, and the one you have been seeking has already begun seeking you. There comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, almost impossible to describe, when the heart realizes something has changed. Not outside, not in your circumstances, but inside, deep inside, where no one else can see. You wake up one morning and notice that the weight you carried for years is no longer sitting on your chest. You stand in prayer and feel your heart opening without effort. You hear a verse from the Quran, and instead of piercing you with guilt, it soothes you with mercy. You sit alone and realize that you no longer fear your own thoughts. This is the moment the heart recognizes forgiveness. It does not arrive with lightning. It does not arrive with visions. It does not arrive with a voice calling your name. Forgiveness arrives like dawn, so quiet, so gentle, so natural, that it feels as if it had been approaching you your entire life. Ibn Arabi writes that a forgiven heart becomes light, so light that even sorrow cannot drown it. Not because sorrow disappears, but because the heart no longer carries the burden of being at war with itself. You feel this lightness in simple ways. A regret that once burned now feels like a lesson. A memory that once stung now passes by like a soft breeze. A person who once wounded you becomes easy to forgive. A prayer that once felt heavy becomes a home. Your inner world, once filled with noise, becomes calm like a window that has finally been cleaned after years of dust. The same view is there, but the clarity is new. You see life differently. You see yourself differently. You realize that the shame you carried was not a punishment. It was a bridge. Your tears were not signs of weakness. They were signs of washing. Your loneliness was not abandonment. It was preparation. And now, suddenly, everything feels aligned. Have you ever felt a moment when you knew, without words, without logic, without proof, that Allah had forgiven you? A moment when your heart felt clean? A moment when your soul felt light? A moment when your past stopped chasing you? Forgiveness feels exactly like that. Sometimes it arrives during sujud, when your forehead touches the earth a little longer than usual. Sometimes it arrives in silence, when your heart whispers, Alhamdulillah, without thinking. Sometimes it arrives in a tear that doesn't sting, it heals. Sometimes it arrives in a breath that feels deeper, purer, freer. The Sufis say that when Allah forgives a person, the first sign is inner stillness, a stillness that does not depend on circumstances. You may still be facing difficulties. You may still be walking through challenges, but your heart no longer trembles as it once did. You stand before the same world, but with a new soul, a lighter soul, a forgiven soul, and you realize something profound. Allah had been preparing you for this moment long before you ever asked for it. So when these quiet signs appear in your life, when the heart softens, when the past rises, when peace enters without reason, do not fear. These moments are not accidents. They may be the footsteps of forgiveness approaching your soul. Before you leave, reflect for a moment. Have you ever felt a small sign in your life that made you wonder if Allah was calling you back to Him? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs tonight. If this message touched your heart, remember to like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a reflection from Voice of Sufism. And when the end cards appear, explore the other journeys waiting for you there, each one a step deeper into understanding, mercy, and awakening. May your heart walk gently toward the one who has been waiting for you all along.